Welcome everybody and good morning to this second day of AICon USA 2025 reporting from Seattle, Washington. Why did I clarify? I don't know if there are other Seattles.
I don't think there's any others. Yeah.
Well, welcome everybody to this first interview of the second day where I have with me our amigo Jeremiah. Jeremiah, welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here and to extend more conversations over all the AI fun and all the initiatives that you do, because I'm also curious of what you have been doing before AI was cool, because it sounds like you were putting things together from before. But in that line, would you mind, for the audience that do not know you, sharing with us who are you, what do you do, why are you here, and what makes you special?
I don't know if I'm special. I'm told regularly that I'm not. So my name is Jeremiah. I've been studying this theme for a very long time. I studied computational linguistics back in college, back when it was not cool at all, and did things like Perl and C and JavaScript, which is still cool. And so basically I did that as an academic passion. I started a few startups, none of them worked. And then I had to pay off my student loans. And so I went to work on Wall Street. Some terrorists flew a plane into my building.
Oh, you were around on those?
Yeah, I worked in Tower 2, floor 62 of the World Trade Center.
Oh,
and
wow.
So it changed my life. I joined the Peace Corps. I worked for 2.5 years in the Dominican Republic, and then worked in Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam. I did a Fulbright Scholarship studying climate change in Costa Rica, and then worked for the UN for a little bit, focusing on Africa, Latin America, and Asia. And then I came back to the United States and did a combined degree, international studies with an MBA, and then finally worked for Microsoft. So I was at Microsoft for about 10 years. I started out with Windows Phone, if you remember them.
Ooh, I like them.
Yeah,
I
did too.
used to love them.
We needed a few more apps and a few other things, but it was a good learning experience. And then eventually, as you know, Windows Phone and Windows merged. I helped launch Windows 10. I was one of the original founders of the Windows Insider program with a guy named Gabe All, and then eventually Donna Sarkar joined to lead the program. So I worked with her. We did a bunch of things in Africa and all around the world. And then eventually I moved to Mexico City. Me encantó. I liked my time there, and especially the tacos. We were talking about that earlier. I ran PM for Mozilla Firefox for a year or two. And then more recently, I'm the CTO of a startup in the EdTech space called Playbook Work. So happy to talk about a bunch of things. Very excited to be here at this conference. Been at a number of the conferences that they put on at Star East, Star West. I'm especially excited about the themes here that we've been talking about, a lot of AI, and trying to really figure out what's real versus the hype. So take it where you want. Yeah.
I'm mind blown of that's quite a resume, and
kind of random.
Yeah, but that's important, because I think that most of the people in these AI times, with all the things that are starting to happen, when you have those random different perspectives, is where you can put things together in a more interesting way. So I can tell why you are being so successful in the things that you are doing right now. And I'm amazed very much. So many things jump at from what you have been doing. The computational linguistics, you said?
Yeah, so the idea is that human beings are hardwired from birth to try to talk to each other. And so you can take a child who is deaf, or a child who is locked. There's some really horror stories of kids that protective services find locked in a room, who find ways to communicate because they could see a crane, like a construction crane outside. So human beings are trying to talk to each other in any way that they can. And one of the fascinating things is, if you go back to Turing, Alan Turing, the idea of a computation machine, the Turing test, essentially there's a set of inputs, and there's things that you can do, and there's outputs. And that's true of machines, that's true of robots, that's true of human beings. And so like the very attempt to construct reasoning and meaning and intelligence from written language, for me is fascinating, because it's sort of like a hard line between how children develop, the early construction of the search engine, Google search, translation, trying to have a translation between English and Spanish, for example, without speaking one of them. There's just so many things that back when we were studying it years ago, they seemed like science fiction, and now you can, anyone on their phone can do it right now.
Those are the foundations of what we have right now,
fascinating.
right?
Like, what a time to live in. Yeah.
It's crazy interesting because so many of the elements that you said, you were reminding me of a novel where some people in jail were communicating just about knocks, and they developed
right.
a language.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the novel if anyone knows it. I think also was part of the plot of the Count of Monte Cristo.
It was.
As well.
That's a good reference. I think.
Yeah. You just made me think of that.
Revenge is a dish best served cold. We're getting dark. Let's move on.
I like that story a lot.
Yeah.
But so and all these components that you're mentioning, I remember also children that do not have a common language, that they start to develop some means of communication is something that we human beings crave for, right?
It's fascinating. So if you take a bunch of, say there's been a couple of natural experiments. So people who are imported to work on plantations in Hawaii or in the U.S. South. In some cases, people were brought together deliberately from different language groups. They didn't speak the same language. So what they would do is they would use the language of the colonizer, of the people who brought them there, and it would be what's called a pidgin language. So me go work now, like concepts for time and effort and verbs and things like that. But their children would hear this sort of caveman pidgin language of their parents, recognize that that's not actually a language, and they would create something called a Creole, which is a fluent language. The definition of a language is a way of speaking with an army and a navy. Right?
What? No, I'm gonna work. Please
Yeah.
share.
So one of the ideas is every generation of children creates language. So if you take a child and put them with a bunch of other children, they're going to teach each other a language. And if they're surrounded by people who are speaking Japanese, it'll be Japanese. If they're surrounded by people speaking Spanish, it'll be Spanish. But if they're surrounded by people who don't speak a common language, the children will create a language so they can communicate with themselves. And it's fascinating. You can see that with the deaf. They will generate their own sign language. You were talking about people who are communicate through knocks. Children, every generation, create their own language. And so it's just fascinating that we, with machines now, in some fancy vector computations, we can simulate what children are doing and have been doing since human beings existed. Yeah.
That's
it's
super
just
crazy
such a great
because
time.
you're totally right. Like, there are some terms that when I was young were like my parents, what are you talking? What is this new thing that it's heavy, dude, or things like that. And now the skibidi thing, and that I have no idea, some of the younger generations, what they are coming up, but they are developing new variations of the language.
We're young, we're super young. We're young in hip.
At heart, at the very least. But I had to watch some videos with young dictionaries, like what does this term mean, and then now with the emoji thing is another tier. I have some friends that
I steer clear of those. No, I do the smiley face.
I have some friends that truly communicate and kind of like, according to them, they are coherent conversations just based on emojis. A few of them send me, I'm like, I feel like an Egyptian archaeologist here trying to kind of like...
You need a Rosetta Stone?
Yeah, to figure out what is this, but use your imagination. I have a lot of that, but this is weird. But I don't know. I'm curious what an AI model would do with those emoji conversations, but it shows all the richness of the foundations and everything that, as you say, in those days was like, data models, or the weird scientists that are there in their corner playing with numbers and data, or...
I was one of those weird scientists.
No, I wasn't...
in a corner playing with numbers and stats.
It's funny when you mentioned the Wall Street part, because I also had some experience on those days. Wealth management with data mining and all sorts of data cubes and crazy data models. When you said that, I'm like, oh boy, that was useful on those days, and this was like 15 years ago for me. What were you doing at Wall Street, if you don't mind asking?
So I was a dev. I was a systems administrator. This is back in the LAMP days, so Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP.
Oh, cool.
And so working with a bunch of this is before high frequency trading. This is people trying to figure out the best way they could leverage information and data to make more money. And so it was fascinating. I'm glad that I had the experience to do that. I also did some consulting, so strategy consulting for bigger banks like JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. And the set of things we did for those large enterprises was more hey, they just did a merger and we need to like bring together their very complex systems and figure out which one to use and then go teach people how to use it. So it is interesting that regardless of the size of the firm, it could be a wealth management fund of 10 people, all the way up to a company with 100,000 people. At its base, in many cases, the problems they're trying to solve are similar. It's just the tools that you use and how rigorous your testing has to be and how comprehensive it has to be that varies. But at the base, it's all very similar.
I was in my mind. You were like sell, and doing that sort of type of things, and post for I don't know,
like boiler room,
Yahoo, $10.
Hey, I've got a really good lead on this stock.
Don't
do that. Don't do that.
No.
Yeah.
No, or on the trading floor, seeing you like screaming stuff.
No.
Quotes.
No. But that scares me.
It's interesting. Yeah, that's.
I don't like crowds.
And yeah, that area is loud. But it's all these models that we were playing with, and with the hardware that we had, and the querying, and the capabilities, programming capabilities that we had. Nowadays they are potentiated, and of course you have been very active here at the conference, teaching some of these elements and how people can leverage. And so you have been very active in this conference. 2 tutorials, participation in the closing keynote panel, and a talk, right?
That's right, yeah.
If I follow up well.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot. So would you mind sharing a little bit first about the tutorials that you were presenting? What were the key principles, or give a little bit like bait people to want to listen to them or attend more tutorials from you?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've already covered is just how many areas that we can go into with AI. So on day one, Donna Sarkar and I gave one of our tutorials. It was a 3.5-hour workshop on becoming an AI power user. And the idea with that is that far from taking our jobs, AI can help us augment what we're already doing. And so looking for the ways to first understand the different roles in the AI-verse, everyone from people who are experts in the problem, who do things like PM and product, to people who are actually developing or fine-tuning or harnessing the data model, or creating or modifying the underlying the model, all the way to people who are just using it. And so the day one on Monday was focused on folks who are using AI from a user point of view. And so regardless of which tool you're using, Gemini, ChatGPT, Copilot, they all are doing very similar things. So helping people have a model for how do you look for those parts of your day where you can enhance and augment what you're already doing and just do it better or faster or cheaper using AI. Mm-hmm. We ran through a bunch of the ways where AI is useful if you're trying to generate lots of new ideas, if you're trying to figure out in a strange or foreign point of view, if you're trying to get information quickly that is just sort of where you can cite the sources. There's a bunch of things that Gen AI does very well. We also ran through some of the areas where you don't want to use AI, or you have to be very cautious using it. So for example, if human life is at risk, you need to be pretty careful with your guardrails. If you need the answer to be timely, well, it turns out Gen AI stops being timely when that model is snapped. That's right. And so just kind of working through some of the ways where AI can help you, some of the ways where AI is a little more challenged just by the way that it's made. And then also helping people, providing them a framework for thinking it through. So we call our process sort of prompt, iterate, and validate. The idea is like, if you're trying to do something kind of simple, just type it in. What is the difference between ahora y ahorita, right? So like things like that, like how many people live in Brazil, or what is the temp? If I wanted to prepare for a trip to Paris, how should I pack? Given all the new Michelin stars restaurants in Mexico City, which of the ones should I go to first? Should I go to Quintonil? Should I go to Pujol? Should I go to that taco spot? A little bit further away.
Yeah. I can't remember the name.
I can't remember the name, but it's like
I cannot go to it anymore.
Oh no, yeah,
because
there's a long line. It's like an hour-long wait. So anyway, so if you are trying to do something kind of quick, just type it in and see what happens. And many times, I would say 90% of the time, that's all you need to do from a user point of view. But sometimes if you're trying to do something more complex, that first response might not be what you're looking for, or it might not be as accurate, or it might not be as useful. And so then we kind of iterate. Let's do a couple more revs through the system and see what we can figure out. We use a mnemonic that Donna made up called Tiny Cats Eat Oranges. So task, context, example, output. So what is the task? What is the set of things that we're trying to accomplish? What is the context? So, okay, you are an expert in marketing. You speak fluent Spanish. You know Mexico City. Help me create some copy in Spanish for someone living in Polanco. And then example. So where is the best taco in Mexico City? Tacos El Turix.
Depending on who you ask.
Depende. Yeah, todo bien. Depende. What is the best? Where can you get the best torta? You know, so giving you a couple of examples.
The Lucha Libre show.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I absolutely had a great time. The food was great, and I freaked the heck out of my daughter. She's 7 years old, and she was like, "Why are those men throwing each other around?" I'm like, it's just for like, no, they're jumping around. Like, yeah. So examples,
acting, baby, it's acting,
and then output. So sometimes you want the output just in text. You wanted a bulleted list. Maybe you want in JSON. So tiny cats eat oranges. Task, context, example, output. And so giving people ways to use that, and then always validate. So you don't want to be that guy who's presenting something in front of the Supreme Court of the United States, and it's totally made up. You don't want to be that person who's sending something.
We've seen that.
We have seen that, and that person has been disbarred. I think bad idea. Not good for your career. So validate.
Really
Yeah, go ahead.
good point, because you need to filter up what is happening. That bouncing up, yes, AI is a great tool, but don't just copy and paste whatever it spits. I love that the context that you were mentioning as well. And then you gave an example that made me just ahora and ahorita. If you know Spanish, it's a peculiar.
It's not even
Wanting,
Spanish. It's like living in Mexico City for a long period of time. It's a very distinct difference.
You need to give the AI that context, because those terms in Mexico City, because I was in Spain, I used my traditional ahorita, and they were just like, so right now?
Right now?
No, ahorita. But ahorita means right now.
It does. Everywhere else except for Mexico City.
Right?
Like,
And it's something that if you don't give that context to the AI, it may give you an immediate solution, and you were like, no, I'm going to go for a coffee and come back, so you have some time. And the AI, like, you say ahorita, oh, you're from Mexico City. Okay. Give that context.
That's right.
And it's super important. Sorry that I interrupted, but
it's absolutely. And so that was kind of day one. That was Monday. That was focused on people who are using AI systems. That's the majority of folks. Day two, we did a workshop more for the builders or the devs, and it was more on agents. So the big conversation everyone's talking about these days is how can you build agentic AI, right? So one of the areas where we started was, first of all, a lot of that's hype. Most of the people who say they're building autonomous AI systems or autonomous agents are lying. They are either regurgitating something that they heard on the internet, which is the majority of cases, or they're doing a toy example that doesn't really work in production. They're not doing it at enterprise scale in most cases. Or they are so constraining what they're doing, so it's actually like automation. Donna calls it sparkling automation. Or it's like a workflow. Like if you do this, then you do that, then you do this, then you do that. That is basic computer science. That's an and or set of gates. And that's not agentic. So autonomous agents are essentially like, I want the agent to go out, figure from a very limited subset of context, figure out what I want and go do it for me, and then tell me that it's done. First of all, we are not ready for that. Our systems are not ready for that. The authentication protocols, security, it's very easy to hack that. Very easy to, if you give someone all of your auth tokens, they can do some really bad things to you. So you're not, and second, the AI isn't ready. Like even when you try to do a one pass, in some cases the accuracy of what I want to do versus did the AI do it, it's like 80%. Times 2, times 3, times like the more times you chain those together, your accuracy drops from maybe a max of 80% to like exactly. That's right. That's exactly right. So in many ways, a lot of the agentic talk is hype, and trying to help people understand that we are very early on in this process, and now is a great time to start playing with this stuff. Second, a lot of folks, when they are exposed to AI systems, they're going to use something like a LangChain or a LangFlow or N8N, and so they're going to use a tool. But a lot of times those abstractions, not only do they make it harder for you to understand, if it goes wrong, you have no idea why. And so we introduced them to the world's jankiest agentic system. I wrote I vibe coded a very quick app based on JavaScript, Node.js, Express backend with a React on the front end. And just sort of let people see that with simple changes of, let me change the model from Mistral to ChatGPT 4.0 to ChatGPT 3.5 to Tiny Llama, there are dramatic differences in the output that you get just by changing the model. And then the amount of modifications to the system that you can make just by using the system prompt, by editing the system prompt, is pretty fascinating. You don't actually have to know how to write code. So you can take this very janky agent that I wrote in a weekend and use it with the system prompt. There's a couple of inference servers you can use. You don't have to pay for your tokens. And so you can get started very easily learning this stuff. And so we kind of walked through it was a 4-hour workshop. We walked people through, how do you think about agents? What are some design principles you might have? And then gave people a chance to play around with it a little bit.
You're making me think a lot. The choice and the exponentiality, because it's something that many of us are not aware of, choosing like one model over the other, and how many iterations do we give to each, and things like that. That they say like, oh yeah, this model is only 1% better than the other. Yeah, but think of that exponentially, that you are connecting multiple elements and that it's going to be flowing in one way or another. And a small difference from one model or the other, I'm super curious of what type of different responses you get from one to the other. And I'm sure that the difference is abysmal, right? And I'm really thrilled because everybody, I saw the first workshop, I was there and it was really good. But the second one, I'm like, now, man, I wish I was there. But some of these points, you're bringing something that everybody think about some of those repercussions. Because sometimes we're just like, yeah, I'm just chaining Legos one to the other, and like, yeah, but what if someone steps on this Lego against the other one doesn't hurt as much, the other will really, really get in trouble. So this is a great perspective.
If it'd be useful, I'd be happy to share the repo with you so you can share it with your audience. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody will get the repo. Ooh, I want it for myself, but everybody will get a very good use of it as well. Super excited. Thanks, man.
Of course.
And now we're kind of ramping down. Would you mind sharing as well? I know that there was a panel going on yesterday as a closing keynote. Quick, anything outstanding that you feel that came up from that panel that you're like, ooh, this was strong and I have to share it with the world?
Yeah, so yesterday was fascinating. Early in the morning, I had a talk where I talked about vibe coding, and I talked about ways to do vibe coding without deleting your database. And there's also a repo on that I could share.
How viable is did that happen by accident with vibe coding?
So if you don't know what you're doing, you can really mess yourself up. And we went through a couple of examples of people who don't know how to code, don't know what they were doing, and got hacked and got exposed to the worldwide bad internet, and predictably bad things happened to them. And so I fundamentally believe that using AI to help you augment your software development it already is a game changer. I have seen that myself in the code that I'm writing for my startup. And so using AI not only to write really boring boilerplate code, but also write test cases, write documentation, explain what I'm doing to my non-technical co-founder. Also, when I want to serve something from AWS or GCP or Azure, it's almost like learning its own language. So using AI to figure out how to set up my environment, dev, test, prod, how to have the GitHub actions to do a CI/CD gateway with some test passes through there. Using AI to make that very complex process easier is useful. And you were asking about the panel, which Donna with a couple other friends of ours, Katie and Rebecca, and I spoke yesterday for the closing keynote panel. And a lot of the questions from the audience were super interesting. And some of the things that I would summarize would say, people are scared, they're wondering where to get started. They're wondering if AI is going to kill us all. Answer, no, it's not. And then just trying to figure out what are some of the use cases for AI to kind of start playing around with it, experimenting it before you need to know it, especially in a world where a lot of the CEOs are being forced by their boards to say we're only going to use AI. It was a great discussion, and I would encourage anyone who's interested to just ping us after this segment.
Some of those elements as well, like there has been today a question floating around, like how are all organizations, and speaking especially like government, medical, some of the ones that usually are the most picky and careful, when you say most are going to be pushed towards like, hey, we have to embrace this, and there's no turning they were saying that the genie's out of the box. Now we have to see how we play and how we literally make our wishes to this genie. Gotta be super careful, because it's can be a mean genie if you're not careful to what you're saying. And
genies are dangerous.
Yeah.
And fun.
if you are not the one receiving the wishes, but big talk there. But
left turn.
Yeah, let's because you mentioned as well another one in terms of dangers and things that we may not be that aware, because we are chaining multiple things right now, putting them together, and security-wise, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, read of this new hack that happened to models that people were inserting into everybody else's chats, things, and when you have all these pieces together, you don't know what crack is on each one of the connections, and you need to be mindful, because we are starting to vibe code or vibe assemble AI, not even just like models, but complete chains and structures that it's getting more complex. And as you very well say, like, do you have the AI part well? Do you have the QA part well? The dev part well? Like, is everything integration? It's a lot, and losing track of one key, 1 meter gap inside of our Death Star can be just like the critical thing that we didn't think of that opening. Damn, and then my missile, if you know the reference.
That was a great reference. So Don and I, a lot of times we refer to this as the third rodeo. So it's not our first rodeo is a phrase we hear often. We would argue that the first rodeo of software development was getting apps working on a desktop machine. And so, writing code that you would install on your laptop or your desktop. Wave 2 was sort of cloud-enabled or mobile-enabled apps where you can install on your phone, and fundamentally you need a connection, whether it's a wireless connection or a wired connection to a server in the cloud somewhere. We argue that our third rodeo is the proliferation of AI-based apps. And sometimes the language model can be on your phone. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you are reaching out to a server that is in the cloud somewhere. And to your point, the security implications of that are pretty profound, because we don't yet know how to do it. We're still figuring it out. The boundaries between organizations, between pieces of code, how do we test for these things? Some of the security vulnerabilities are new. The way that the API call returns a result, it's non-deterministic. So a lot of this stuff is new. We haven't yet figured it out. And so while acknowledging just how magical this AI thing is, we should also, we owe it to the world to say, well, there's a couple of areas that we really need to pay attention. And to your point, security is definitely one of those.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know, everybody has to be, it's a balance of embracing all this new technology and running wild with the knife on the hand and be careful, but you still want to be
Don't run with knives.
Yeah, be careful. Have them downside, or so those little recommendations, like if you want to be running around with that or you're in a hurry, just turn it down and you'll be safer. Just the key is balance, safe, secure, but progressing. And in the line of these rodeos, I'm curious, before we wrap up, one last question before we do the closure. Do you foresee or have an idea how the fourth rodeo may look like?
So the short answer is no. And I think anyone who tells you that they know what the future is going to look like is probably trying to sell you something. I would think that for a little bit of time, we as a society, need to figure out some of these things. We are now able to talk to a piece of code that seems like it's intelligent, but actually is not. It's a statistical model that is doing, pattern recognition and generating new things based on patterns it's seen in the past.
It's doing good guesses, and that's it.
Doing good guesses, and so it is not. Even the reasoning models are not actually. They're not intelligent, and so understanding how do these mysterious, magical, scary new pieces of software, how do they actually work? Having it proliferate to the corners of the world that might have been left behind, but as these models are becoming more powerful and smaller, having things work on the edge. So someone in the desert, or a farmer who's out trying to figure out what blight is affecting her crops, or how if I'm a fisherwoman and I'm out at sea and I need to figure out how do I navigate, right? So there's things we can already do offline without the full power of a OpenAI's frontier model, with a small model that can run on an Android phone. And there are some use cases that we don't understand. Like the amazing things we can already do in medicine, in law, in finance, in government is fascinating, but it's scary because the output that we're getting from these systems is so amazing looking. You have to be an expert to catch the errors. And so first, I would say that we should probably have a good handle on Act 3, the third rodeo. If I were to guess, I would say kind of like once that happens, and it is likely going to be years, if not decades, it would be more building out from that and truly having agents talk to agents without a human who's monitoring it at all times. I think it'll look something like that, so more agentic versus the sort of one-off AI systems that we currently have, if I were to guess.
Not so much human involvement, but just fully 100%.
So we still need a human in the loop, but much less human involvement because we will trust it more. In the old days, you would go to the bank in person to see the banker and hand off the cash, and now it's like, oh, here's a credit card and you pay for it, and you just trust that the whole system works. But it didn't happen magically. It happened over a long period of time. A lot of people got burned and lost a lot of money first, and so I think we're going to go through that with AI as well.
Yeah, those starters or speed bumps that we hit on this AI race are going to be interesting. I'm curious of what is going to happen. Hopefully it's not too ugly, so that it's just like, oh, this happened, cool story, next. Jeremiah, thank you very much. These are
thank you. It's been fun.
Incredible perspectives, and I love it because every time that I talk with everybody of the presenters, the tutorials and everything, my mind doesn't stop racing in so many ways that it's really, really great. If anyone else watching also has the mind racing, wants to get in touch with you, find out about the repositories that you were referencing, where can they get in touch with you and follow up with you?
So the easiest place would be, we talked about the third rodeo. So Don and I have a business doing AI consulting, Third Rodeo, 3RD, rodeoai.com. That would be the easiest way.
I think it's exactly as you see it written down here. Mm-hmm.
Probably, yep. Ta-da! And then also, I'm Jeremiah, Jeremiah, at thirdrodeoai.com.
Excellent. So you can get in touch with Jeremiah, reach out, check what are the services of Third Rodeo, and ask for some of these questions and the exercises, check the repos. We're going to ask for the links.
Definitely, yeah.
They're going to be in the video comments. And stay tuned. And I really, really appreciate all these words, Jeremiah. Thank you very much.
So much fun.
Un placer.
El placer mío.
Excelente.
Ya sabes.
Muy bien. Okay, everybody. So that was it. Our amigo Jeremiah, who has endured with Mexico City here and there. So muy bueno.
I loved it. It was so much fun.
And well, this is not over yet. We're about to do the Expo Center run so that you get to know all the sponsors, what do they do. There's a little game going on as well, so we're going to try to go through the game. Yesterday we missed the passport run, so we're going to have another run today. And stay tuned, because after that we are going to have more interviews, more information, and more mind-blowing details, and even some heart-warming details. We have a special guest for the end that it's mind-blowing. So, amigo, thank you very much. Again, it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
And everybody, stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment. Adios.
Adios.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.